Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Captain.
And I'm Alex.
And today we're going to be reviewing and showing you how to play Mythic Mischief. Before we get too into this, I do want to give a big thank you to the company that put out Mythic Mischief, All Right Studio, for this free review copy of Mythic Mischief that they gave me to be able to play and film some content with. So thank you. I also want to say I've got a ton of links in the description down below that you can check out at your leisure. There's a link to BoardGameCaptain.com, which is a great hub for all things Board Game Captain. There's also a link to my Teespring store if you'd like to get yourself some cool Board Game Captain merch, t-shirts, mugs, etc., like the one I'm wearing here, which says, I drink and I game. It's what I do, and has a mug of ale and a D20 on it over here. I don't even know where it is on my own shirt. And there's also a link to my Patreon if you're in a position to and would like to support the channel. All right, so Mythic Mischief. Alex, why don't you give us the stats on Mythic Mischief here? What do we got?
This is a ostensibly 1 to 4 player game. We'll talk about that later.
Well, let's discuss right now.
Okay, let's do it right now.
So I would say this is a 2-player game with some alternate modes on there for more and less players. Like because the way you play solo and the way you play with 3 and 4 players are significantly different than the 2-player game, which really feels like where the designer originally thought of this game and thought of the mechanics. Would you agree with that statement?
I would. It seems like it's actually more logical to go to a single person game than to go to like a 3 or 4.
Yeah, because
it seems like it's too much.
It's like a team game.
Right.
It's not a free-for-all. If you play a 3-player game, it's a 2 versus 1. If you play a 4-player game, it's a 2 versus 2. It really does feel like these are add-ons and extra ways to enjoy the game, which is nice, but it's really a 2-player game.
Yeah, 2-player game.
What do we got?
Playtime, 45 to 90 minutes,
Maybe.
depending. Yeah.
Possibly. The thing is, this is a game that very much lends itself to analysis paralysis because you wind up having to take a lot of time planning out your turn before you actually take a turn. And depending on the game and how it's going, that may take more or less time. Because of it, especially when you're learning in early games, will go significantly more than that.
Yeah.
It is possible to get down to that.
Sure.
After you've played this game a lot and have a game that doesn't wind up just through the situations in the game presenting you with a bunch of conundrums, but it's also possible to go a lot higher than that.
Yeah, I'd say 45 is probably the bare minimum for sure. I would say that you're not going to get... You're very rarely going to play a game shorter than that.
Yeah.
And then ages 14 plus.
Yes.
Yes, I definitely agree. It looks like the theme looks like it's meant for kids younger than that, but it's for pretty not advanced, but pretty experienced gamers, I would say, and you should probably be in your teens before attempting this one.
No disagreement whatsoever. So I also want to talk about a little bit the fact that this game, what is this game, before we start looking at all the components here. This game is very strange. It is a abstract game plus, and it's also a thematic abstract game, which is a little odd. And what do I mean by that? So in the past, I would have thought of a thematic abstract game as being a complete oxymoron, a complete contradiction in terms, but games like this and also That Time You Killed Me have shown me that you can make a thematic abstract game. You still have the abstract mechanisms, though the game actually fits a theme very well, which is really odd, and this is like that a lot.
Right.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I remember after playing this a few times being like, this reminds me of That Time You Killed Me. Not for any specific reason whatsoever, but just how it feels to play.
Yes. And then also, it's an abstract plus because there are some mechanisms in here that are not abstract. Like there's engine building in here.
Yeah.
Which is not something you would see in an abstract game. But the main gameplay moving around the board feels like an abstract, but the engine building makes it feel more than an abstract game.
Right, and you also have different player powers. So you have asymmetric player abilities, which, again, is a tweak on that abstract structure.
The basic theme of this is you are cliques in a school that is devoted to supernatural creatures. You are mythics, if you will. And each of the cliques are a different monster. In the base set, you have vampires, zombies.
You have Frankenstein's monsters, and you have wizards.
Yes. There are also some expansions. We'll reference that a little bit later. But in each one, you get the components for them in the box. We've got the rulebook. The rulebook is very well done. Not too many ambiguities in here. Most of it is very well explained. I would give this at least a 1 thumb up on the rules. I would say that for the most part, it is a very well done rules. There were one or two ambiguities that we had to either reread the rule book or look up online, but for the most part, pretty good.
Yeah, I would say for the most part, it's pretty good. Yeah.
Then we've got a lot of these ones. I'm going to hand you some. We got some player boards here. These are for the various factions. So, like, here is Frankenstein's monsters.
There's the zombies.
And then here is the vampires here.
And the wizards.
Now, all of these are where you do the engine building on. You'll see all that while we're showing you how to play the game. Mm-hmm. Then we have a small little main board here, which keeps track of the score on the bottom and has the spaces on it for moving around. We have a bunch of custom colored dice, which you'll see are not used for rolling, but are actually used for keeping track of your abilities in the engine building portion. We have 4 of these, and these are great. I'll let you grab some too.
Yeah.
These are little trays for each of the factions. Here you have the wizards, and in it, it's got all of the components for the wizards, including their miniatures for each of the characters in the wizard faction, which the miniatures are really, really cool. I love these a lot. I'm going to pull out one of the wizard miniatures to show here. But these are really detailed, really cool. They all manage to look like high school kids while also looking like supernatural creatures. That's one of the zombies there.
Right.
But there's 3 for each faction. They're all really awesome. And then there is a miniature for the Tome Keeper. Just going to show a few of these up on the screen here. The Tome Keeper with his big stack of books on his back. These are really awesome. Love these a lot. There's also the miniatures for the bookshelves, which we have in some of these here. These are what the bookshelves look like. These you're going to see out on the board as we're playing. And you have cards, which are just more functional than artwork, really. They're good for what they need to be because they just show you the setups for different rounds, because the setup can be a little random by dealing out cards. We'll show that while we're playing. And we have some cardboard punch-out pieces. Functional, nothing to rave about there. I would say my favorite part of the components here has got to be the miniatures.
The miniatures and the boards.
Oh, the recessed, because they're
Yes.
recessed for putting the dice in, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
I agree. Those are really awesome. That's basically it. That is everything that comes in the box. So now let's head over to the table. We're going to run you through basically a full game to show you how this plays. And then we're going to come back. We're going to talk about how this game plays and feels. And we're going to rate it and review it. Okay, so here we are set up to play a 2-player game of Mythic Mischief. I'm going to be on this side of the table, and I'm playing the vampires, who are represented by the color blue. So all of the blue pieces on the board are my vampires.
And I am over here. I am playing Frankenstein's monsters. The green players green characters on the board. Also green player card.
So to set up the game, you have to place the library board in the middle of the board. Then you place the Tome Keeper on the center space of the library board. Then you have to shuffle and place one before lunch card face up and one after lunch card face down. Then you have to add one tome for each of the players to the score tracker at the 0 space. The bookshelves and clutter piles are set up according to one of 3 presets in the book, or you can draft setting them up. I find setting them up by the presets much quicker. We are using preset number 1, but when we play, we generally randomize it, since there are 3, by rolling a die off to see if we're going to use preset 1, 2, or 3. Then you have to set up the before lunch card. Now, the before lunch card shows you spaces where each of you put one of your tomes, and where you place the objective tokens that the Tome Keeper must reach, the 1, the 2, and the 3 tokens. I have the 2 here under this vampire here. That is the order in which that the Tome Keepers are turning books to the library shelves, and they will take the quickest or shortest path to each of their destinations. Then each of the players has to choose a faction they will play. I chose the vampires and Alex chose the monsters. And then you roll off to see who decides who goes first. So for our roll off, I decided that I would go second. So the second player gets to take a tome and immediately place it on the board in one of their skills to up that skill. I did it in movement. The book does actually recommend, if you're not sure where to put it in movement. The first player then places all of their mythics, their player pieces, out on the board. That was Alex, and you have to place them in spaces that do not contain a tome, do not contain another mythic, and do not contain the Tome Keeper. Once they have done that, the second player does the same. You set up your personal player board with its dice on it based on the starting dots on the board, which tell you where to place one of their dice, which keeps track of your abilities in each of the abilities, and placing a tome in the the ultimate ability area that you can use once per game. Again, I got to alter my starting abilities a little bit though, because I will be going second, and the player who goes second gets a tome to place somewhere on the board. And then you're ready to play. Now for this game, I think this is one that is really good to really just learn while seeing how all the actions go. So we're going to run you through a full game of this and show you each and every one of the actions that the vampires and the monsters have. The actions do differ from faction to faction, but I think these are a good pair of factions to show. And then we're going to go back to the table. We're going to talk about how this game plays, and we're going to rate it and review it. So without any further ado, Alex is the first player, so he is going to take the first turn. Now, during Alex's first turn, he has the number dice on his board, which show how many actions and of what types he is able to play. Also, of course, he has his ultimate ability with a tome in it, which he can discard at some time during the game. You can place new tomes you collect around the board. You can place one back in that slot to be able to do it again, or later at the end of your turn, you can use them to up your stats, which can be multi-use. So that will be up to him. So Alex, I turn it over to you for your first turn.
Okay, first turn for the first player. Since I have not upped any of my abilities, usually pretty standard, just kind of collecting tomes. So I'm going to use my 1 here to move this player into this spot, collecting that tome.
Now, when doing a movement, you can only move orthogonally, never diagonally with normal movement. Each point of movement allows you to move a single space. So as you saw, Alex turned his die down to a 0 and moved that particular monster onto a space with a tome.
Correct. And I'm going to do the same for this monster over here.
You want me to move him onto the tome for you?
Please, thank you. And I'm going to grab the tome, add it to the pool area here, and then my last movement will be used on this monster to do the same and collect this tome. And that's all my movement. I'm not going to use any of my special abilities at this point. Josh was very careful how he set up so that I would not be able to do it.
Yeah, I was very worried because Alex has some abilities where he can throw me around the library, and I didn't want to get thrown in the path of the Tome Keeper on the very first turn, because you get caught by the Tome Keeper, that's how the other player gets points. Now that Alex has passed by his Mythic phase, the next thing he does is the Tome Keeper phase, where he moves the Tome Keeper. A number of spaces is indicated by the current face-up card. Right now in the Before Lunch card, we move 4 spaces for the Tome Keeper, and it must move in the shortest distance possible, though Alex does decide if there's multiple shortest distances, towards the next objective. So its first objective is the number 1 down here in the corner, and he gets to move 4 spaces.
1, 2, 3, and 4. Tome Keeper has made his objective.
So we pull the objective token off the board. Next, he will be moving towards the number 2 objective, which is all the way up here under this particular vampire. But keep in mind, I do have time to get off of that particular objective before he gets up to me. So the next phase is the cleanup phase. So the first thing Alex does is slide all his dice all the way to the left side of his board. And then the next thing he does is he adds his tomes to his board. They go on the leftmost space of any of the tracks, boosting up the dice. So Alex, where are you going to put your tomes?
I'm going to boost Distract up 1.
Okay.
I'm going to boost Barge up 1.
Okay.
Those both start at 0. And I'm going to boost my movement, up by 1 as well.
Good plan, good plan. Then Alex gets to take his boost part of this phase, which is he gets to get 2 boosts to either the same or different dice. So these allow him to move the dice 1 space to the right. If you boost a die in the movement area, you only boost 1 of the dice, though, not both. So Alex, which dice are you going to boost?
I'm going to boost Barge. That gets me 1 whole upgrade, and I'm going to boost. I'm going to boost my movement actually up 1.
All right, and then at this point, he resets all the dice to the current numbers shown in their locations, and that is the end of Alex's turn. All right, so I'm going to start by doing 3 movement. I'm going to reduce this 3 to a 0, and I'm going to move this monster, this vampire here, 1, 2, 3, because it costs 2 movement to get onto a rubble pile, and I will collect that book. Then I am going to spend their conceal point to maneuver this wall 1 space. I can move it either clockwise or counterclockwise around the space that I am in, which I just did there. Then I am going to spend 2 movement to move this monster here 2 spaces in this direction. I'm not going to use my lure, and I'm just going to finish up my mythic phase there. Then for the Tome Keeper phase, he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, moving towards the number 2 objective as he does. Then during my cleanup phase, I'm going to slide everything down. I'm going to spend my 1 book on the move so I can get my movement higher, because I would like a lot more movement than I currently have. And then for my boost, I'm going to do a boost to the conceal and the distract ability so I can get them both up to a 1, which brings my movement all the way up to a 7, which is pretty respectable, and leaves my lure, my conceal, and my distract all at 1. So I got 1 I can do during each future turn now. And that is going to be it for my first turn.
All right. I'm going to move 2 to here. Going to use my barge to go down for 1, which is going to move this wall there.
Oh, you're shortening his route.
All right. I'm going to use this 3, go down to 3 to move 1 more time here. Oop, use my throw. 1 to a 0.
And now throw allows a monster player to move a either ally or enemy character to the complete opposite side of him. They have to be neighboring to him, and then he can move them to the opposite side. So he put me directly in the Tome Keeper's path.
I'm going to use 1 more movement to get him a little out of the way. I'm going to use 2 movements on him. 1, 2. And then I'm going to use Distract to bring the Tome Keeper into this space. Okay, now use Distract to draw him out.
So that will remove my guy from the board, and Alex will get a point. Anytime you remove one of your opponent's pieces from the board during your turn, during any part of your turn, you get a point. You remove a piece from the board by having the Tome Keeper walk into them. Now the Distract ability, which Alex just did, allows him to bring the Tome Keeper on the shortest possible path towards the piece that did the Distract. I'm guessing it was this piece here. And that is how that works. Now, if the Tome Keeper ever walks into your own piece, you will lose a point if he walks into your own piece on your turn.
Correct. So now he has gotten to his second goal. So we remove that. Now I'm going to use my legendary ability of Intimidate, which I have to remove the tome from that portion of the card.
What does Intimidate do?
Intimidate moves a neighboring enemy, so any space around the monster I'm using, which is him, to move 2 spaces towards the Tome Keeper. So I'm going to move this vampire 2 spaces towards the Tome Keeper, and that is going to end my Mythic phase. So now goes into the Tome Keeper movement phase, and he has to take the shortest route towards this destination. So that would be 1, 2, capturing this vampire. There you go.
Gives you a point.
I'm going to point up to 2 there. 3. It would take him 2 movement to get into the clutter pile, which he does not have. So he stops short at number 3, leaving him right there.
Indeed, he does.
So that is the end of the Tome Keeper phase. Now I have to do my reset here. So everybody moves back. I did not get any tomes, so I am just going to up my throw by 2 for the bonus phase. And that will end my turn.
Starting my turn, I can use the spots marked with the circles. Those are the secret passages to respawn my mythics on the board. So I'm going to put 1 mythic here and 1 mythic here. Then I'm going to use my lure action to lure from this mythic here. I'm going to lure this enemy monster here, and he's going to move 1 space diagonally close towards me, ignoring all movement penalties, so he's going to move up onto that pile. Then I'm going to use a Distract from this mythic here to draw the Tome Keeper into that monster, giving me my first point on the scoreboard. I'm then going to use 2 movement, like so, 1, 2, to pick up this tome, and 1 of my conceal to move this bookshelf like so. I'm then going to use 2 more movement, emptying out this 4 to a 0 here, to move up on to the clutter pile. I'm then going to use my final 3 movement to move this mythic 1, 2, 3, and take another tome from over here, and I am done with my mythic phase. Moving on to the Tome Keeper phase, the Tome Keeper is going to move 1, 2, 3, 4, and get the 3rd objective, clearing out the first round. I will ended the first round here with 1 less point than my opponent, but I did manage to pick up more tomes than they did. So I'm going to finish out my round with my cleanup phase, where again, I'm going to bring all of the dice down to the left. I'm going to add my 2 tomes to my board. I'm going to place my first tome in my movement to up it to a maximum movement. I'm going to place my second tome on conceal to up it to a single conceal. Then for my boost, I'm going to boost conceal and distract, and then flip everything over, of course, to the appropriate numbers, so that I will have 2 conceal, 1 distract, 1 lure, and I will have a total of 9 movement going into the after lunch time period here. So now for the after lunch time period, we flip our before lunch card face down, we flip our after lunch card face up. We now have new objectives added to the board in the appropriate locations, which are the 1 here, the 2 there, and the 3 there. And then we add cubes to the board in the marked cube areas after having removed all of our own cubes from the board from the pre-lunch time period. So the locations for the cubes as shown on the card are there.
Under the Tome Keeper.
Under the Tome Keeper is right, and over here. And then we are all set up for after lunch, and it is Alex's turn to start us off with after lunch. And oh boy, look at that. We both wound up in the path, though he can get out of it, of the Tome Keeper headed towards his first objective in the post-lunch period. Now that we are in the after lunch time period, we each unlock our after lunch special abilities. So for the vampires, my after lunch special ability is that I can collect up to 4 blood points. I collect 1 every time I walk through an enemy mythic, and at the end of the round I can spend them for extra boosted dice. I can boost my dice more.
All right, and then my after lunch special is I have the trap ability. I can trap an adjacent enemy. They can't move on the next turn. I basically drop this little bear trap token on their space, and they are stuck there for the next turn. Again, it only works on an adjacent enemy though. All right, so I still have to respawn my captured monster. I'm going to place him on this location here, which corresponds to that on the after lunch card. I'm going to use, as my first move, distract from that monster, bringing the Tome Keeper into the clutter pile. It ignores movement penalties.
Oh, you cleared it up so you could get the tome.
Possibly. I'm then going to use 1 movement by my monster here to go to this spot. After that movement, I'm going to use my throw ability to move this vampire into this space adjacent to the Tome Keeper. Because it was not done on the captain's turn, the vampire does not collect the tome, and it can only occur on your own turn. So he is now located there. I'm going to use my ability 1, 2, 3 movements here to get this guy out of the way. 1, 2, 3, collecting that tome.
Very nice.
Okay, so that ends the mythic phase. I'm going to move into the Tome Keeper phase. The Tome Keeper now only has 3 movement after lunch. So his movement is going to be 1, capture that vampire. 2, 3, capturing that vampire, giving me 2 more points, achieving that objective, and that ends the Tome Keeper phase. So
well played.
So I will now move into my resetting.
All right, so for respawning my guys, I'm going to spawn 1 here and 1 here. Then I'm going to start my turn by doing a single move. I'm going to roll my die down from a 4 to a 3 here to move this vampire to this location here. Then he will do a single lure to pull this monster off of his space there, followed by 2 more movement, bringing my 3 down to a 1 over here to move through the monster space and take my tome. Then he will do a distract to distract the Tome Keeper 1 space towards him. Then I'm going to take 2 movement to bring my other vampire I just spawned out over to here, and I'm going to take 1 conceal to move this bookcase around him, between him and the Tome Keeper. Also, because I moved through the monster, I gain one of my blood tokens. Then I'm going to do a second conceal to move this bookcase to this location here. And I'm going to spend the rest of my 4 movement to move this vampire 1, 2, 3, 4, back 1, and pick up a second tome. Now, the way I've altered the board, it is now shorter for the monster to actually move on to the second objective here. As you see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, versus the other path, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So he will move 1, 2, 3, which is his full movement, and capture a single monster, giving me a point, helping me to start catching up, because I am a bit behind here. And by the way, the reason you only move 3 is because the after lunch card has a movement of 3 and not 4 like the before lunch cards do. Then moving on up to my cleanup phase, I'm going to do my cleanup, and it will be Alex's turn. I do just want to make a special note that I am going to be spending my blood token to get an extra boost for my cleanup for round 2.
Okay, I'm going to respawn my captured monster onto this clutter pile, correct. Using my distract, I'm going to use him to distract Tonekeeper into this vampire.
You bugger.
Capturing him, moving me up to 5. I'm going to use 1, 2 movement to go 1, 2.
Oh, I know it's coming.
I'm going to use a barge to move this wall to there.
Okay.
I'm going to use 1 more movement, and then from that die, and then 1 movement from this die to move onto that clutter pile. 1, 2. I'm going to use my throw to throw that vampire to there.
No.
All right, I'm going to use my last 4 movement. 1, 2, 3, 4. Grab my tome, and I'm going to drop a trap.
So now on my turn, I will not be able to use that vampire.
So that ends my mythic phase. Now the Tomekeeper movement phase.
1.
Yep, take that guy. Oh, jeez.
I got him.
Okay. 1, 2. Cannot make it onto the pile, so he's going to stay there.
And you get a point for capturing another one of my guys. All right, so my turn.
It is your turn. Here's your other vampire back, and I'm gonna
do your cleanup phase.
do my cleanup. Go ahead and get started. It'll take a moment.
All right, start off my turn. I'm going to spawn back my 2 vampires to some of the secret passage spots on the board. And then to start off, I'm going to start off with a lure from my vampire who can't move. He's going to lure this monster in the way. Then he's going to do both of his distracts on the Tonekeeper, who's going to move up twice to capture both monsters. So since the Tonekeeper has moved through the second objective, we're going to remove the second objective from the board. Then next, I am going to activate my Trance legendary ability, and I'm going to move the final monster 2 spaces in the following direction. Then I will move this vampire 2 spaces to go pick up a tome, 1, 2, like so, followed by moving them 2 more spaces to move them up here, followed by doing a conceal move to move this wall here. I'm going to use my final 5 movements to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, moving through one of the enemy mythic spaces twice and getting 2 blood tokens. And then the mythic will, the Tomekeeper, on the Tomekeeper space, will go 1, 2, 3, capturing the final of the 3 mythics. I will gain a total of 3 points, mostly catching back up. Had been doing pretty poorly, but managing to capture all 3 monsters that turn really shot me back up on the scoreboard. So we're going to call it there because all Alex has to do on his turn is absolutely nothing. It allowed the Tomekeeper to walk onto the 3rd objective, ending the game. Now there are 2 ways to win the game of Mythic Mischief. You either end the game with the most points, which Alex currently has, or if you score 10 points, the game immediately ends and you win the game. So even though I had a really good comeback on that turn, it was not enough to pass Alex's point value. He had a great lead on me, and that is going to be game. We're going to call it game for Alex. Good game, sir.
Very good. Very good.
So now we're going to head back over. We're going to talk about how this game plays and feels, and we're going to rate it and review it. Okay, welcome back. So let's go over the positives and the negatives for Mythic Mischief. I don't have much in the way of negatives on this game.
I really don't either. Other than you can, if you're buying this thinking this is a lighthearted, easy, approachable sort of intro game because of the theme, because it's a bunch of high school kid monsters, you are going to be surprised. So
yeah, this is a very deep game. There's a lot of gameplay here.
Yeah, reading the numbers on the back should tip you off. The 14 plus 90-minute game, right? This is a much deeper game than it looks like at the beginning. So maybe a slightly misleading on the theme, but that's not really the game's fault. Just be aware.
So that's a minor negative. Let me throw one out. Now I've got a very minor one. This is almost grasping at straws. The inserts in this are fantastic, and that'll be one of my positives later. My minor gripe, though, is that the bookshelves are split up amongst all of the faction trays, so that when you're playing two specific factions, you still have to open the other two trays to get them out. This is ludicrously minor. This is such a grasping at straws for a negative, because I don't really have any real negatives. Did you have any other negatives for this?
No, not at all.
All right, so that's it for our negatives. Positives. Since you went first on the negatives, why don't you go first on the positives?
I thoroughly enjoy the deep analytical form, the gameplay of this. Like, it is astounding how much thought goes into this game. I was not prepared for that, but I really enjoyed it. It is a chess level analysis because of how much you have to keep, not even keep track of, but how deep the strategy goes in the gameplay. It is, all of the game is strategy, and you have to have it dialed in, and then it changes immediately.
I would say you often spend more time thinking about what to do on your turn than actually doing your turn, because it is so brain burning.
Right.
It is so deep in its strategy. And its tactics, because it changes when your opponent takes a turn, and now you have to change your strategy completely. On the fly, come up with new tactics.
Absolutely.
And that is brilliant. It is very well thought out. This game, this game was very well designed and very well thought out. A very intelligent game, a very engaging game, a very amazing game. This is actually one of the best abstract type games I've played in a while. It's up there as one of my favorites of recent years.
For sure.
Granted, it is an abstract plus, but I thoroughly agree with you on that. The gameplay is amazing. My first big plus is going to be the production. Like you said in the intro, the recessed boards for the dice and books to be in are great.
Yep.
The miniatures all look great. There's different miniatures for each of the factions, and they all look fantastic, and they look great on the board. And the inserts, minus my minor gripe about having to put the bookshelves in some of the factions' trays, are phenomenal. I also love how you can just grab your tray out and you put it out in front of you, and you've got everything you need for that faction, which really speeds up setup.
Yeah, setup is not a problem at all. I don't think we didn't really play around with the drafting setups. We kind of randomized what was in the book already. But between the randomized setups that are prepackaged in the book and the just inherently random setups of using the cards, you have a totally different game setup every time you play, or can at least.
Yes.
And then you inject the asymmetrical player abilities.
Yes. Oh, that's the next plus right there.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So the variability of gameplay, we've played several of these already, and it's
several. Jesus, we played every faction.
Several games of this.
Well, we have actually played every faction and every expansion faction at this point. So we played a ton.
Yeah, and the setup is always different, and then respawning and all that kind of stuff. It's the variability in just the structure of the board is really another one of my big pluses for this.
Yeah, so let's move right into, because you already mentioned what should be basically the next plus is the asymmetrical player powers.
Oh yeah, right, exactly.
The asymmetrical player powers in this are great. Each of the factions works very differently from each other. And grab those that are off camera there. They gave me also, which these are coming soonish. We're going to review these. They gave us the 3 expansion factions they had at the time, which are the witches, ghosts, and trolls. The base set, again, comes with zombies, vampires, monsters, and wizards.
Right.
Every faction is different, and also every faction has, you know, good and not so good matchups with certain other factions. Everyone has one where it's like, oh, my opponent got to choose first, and they picked that one. Oh, I'm going to pick this one,
Right?
Because that's going to do well against them, even though generally they don't do well against certain other factions, but against this faction,
Yeah.
that's going to do
Right.
like gangbusters against them. And that is, I think that the asymmetrical player powers are phenomenal.
The variability it lends to the game, and the like how you can totally change the way you play the game based on which faction you're going against.
Absolutely.
The variability is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And then on top of the really well structured game, it works out really well.
So also the other thing is the engine building aspect of it, the way you can customize your faction. So you can play the same faction multiple times. And like Alex was saying, you play it against a different enemy faction. That's going to change how you play. It's also going to change the choices you make and which abilities you upgrade.
Right.
Which changes how your faction plays.
Absolutely. And learning how to best maximize the abilities of your faction is actually another really fun part of this game, because you know some of them are very movement based, some of them are very like sort of sneaky, like luring
or manipulating your opponent
and moving your opponent. There's one faction, I think it's that can move the Tome Keeper, which is very unusual, but that's
the zombies.
The zombies can
move
an incredibly. I've made so far the only one I think that can actually manipulate the Tome Keeper themselves.
Other than doing the distract action, which everyone can do.
Everyone can do that, right.
But they have a way to move, because the distract pulls the Tome Keeper towards one of you. The zombies have an ability to push the Tome Keeper away, and they're the only one who has that.
Right.
Which means they're the only person with 2 abilities to move the Tome Keeper. Which is pretty huge. Everybody's got something unique about them that like no one else can do, and that's one of the other things that makes them so interesting. Makes you want to try every faction, because everyone's like, "Oh wait, this faction can do what now?" And we're not even going to talk about the expansion factions yet, because we're going to give each one of them their own videos. But when you add them into the mix, the variety just explodes.
Yeah,
absolutely explodes. But even with just the 4 factions in here, they're all very different.
I agree. And speaking of the factions, it's a lot of fun how the theme lands on top of this. You've got the Frankenstein's monsters are the jocks and the cheerleaders, right? You've got the vampires are the greasers.
They're greasers and metalheads, basically.
Right,
yeah. The zombies are skaters.
Skaters, right?
Yeah. They're like skate punks, and the wizards are the nerds.
The nerd, yeah.
And they all have different. So they're a clique mixed with a group of supernatural creatures, and then they all have abilities, which you saw the monster and vampire abilities. They have abilities that very much fit their theme.
Yes.
The wizards can open teleportations. They open teleporting portals. The zombies have a thing where they can leave body parts around for people to slip on. They all have very interesting abilities that fit their faction's theme. So it is a very thematic, abstract.
I love the vampires can literally feed on the other faction in order to gain bonuses.
Yes.
It's actually pretty cool.
It's totally thematic. That is a totally thematic ability of theirs. This game is great. I have not had a bad time playing this game, and we have had occasion to play this game as many as like 4 or 5 times in a row already.
Yeah.
Because we'll be like, but I want to try that faction. Let's play again.
Right.
And there was one day where we played this game, had to be like about 5 times.
Probably, yeah. I think we sorted through almost all the I think I've played every faction except maybe one.
I don't think you've been the Wizards yet.
I don't think I've been the Wizards yet.
The Wizards are kind of a challenging faction, in my opinion, and we're including the expansion factions in regard to playing like all the factions.
Right.
The Wizards are rather challenging. They're one I don't think you should start with, because they're a little trickier to get right. You have to be very deliberate with their after lunch ability of setting down the portals.
Right.
Because if you set the portals willy-nilly, and before you know the game, you're going to set them down willy-nilly, you won't realize how to really be deliberate and place them in right places. But I think they're one of those ones where, like, if you're more advanced, you can challenge yourself with them.
Sure.
Because they can be a little tough with some of their abilities. But yeah, no, they're all the factions are different. There's reasons to try every one.
Absolutely, and you should try as many as you can, because it totally changes the way you approach the game.
Yeah. Is there anything we haven't talked about with Mythic Mischief? Does that basically cover it?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, the deep brain burning strategy, totally variable gameplay, replayability. It's
a combination of a thematic and an abstract game in one, along with engine building. These are all wonderful mechanics that I love. Do you want to go first or second on the rating?
I'm gonna go second.
Okay, so I adore this game. I don't know if you can tell that I've been raving about it. I really like it a lot. It is, and it's a little tough for me to even figure out if this is an abstract game or not. It feels like there's an abstract game at its core, and then it has added a lot on top of that. I'm not sure if it's still an abstract game, but if it is, if we would consider this still to be an abstract game, this is going to be up there in my top 3 abstract games of all time. That's how much I like this game. If we decide we consider it an abstract game, which I still haven't fully decided. Like, I feel like it's kind of an abstract game, but it's also kind of not.
Well, it straddles it. It's not purely abstract, but it's not. But it is mostly abstract.
I'm gonna go 9.5 stars out of 10. This is near perfect for me. I love this game. Love this game. 9.5 stars out of 10, near perfect game. Absolutely adore it. Highly recommend. If anything we talked about sounds cool to you, highly recommend Mythic Mischief. Your turn.
This, like I said, this reminded me of That Time You Killed Me. I gave That Time You Killed Me a 10.
Yes. So did I. That's a phenomenal. So comparing it to That Time You Killed Me is a big compliment because we love that game.
I still like That Time You Killed Me more.
Okay,
but just a little bit more.
So you're pretty close too?
So I'm very close. Yeah, I don't want to give it a 9.5 because you gave it a 9.5.
No, you don't use that as part of your decision. Where were you going to give it?
But I'm going to give it a 9.5.
Oh, okay.
Because it's exactly where it needs to be.
Wow.
It is almost a perfect game.
So just I just want to point this out there. We're talking about now, we're giving it a 9.5 from both of us. That is 19 out of a possible 20 stars for this rank. This is near perfect.
Yes. I think we rated what was the last one I got this? A Feud, I think I gave a 9.
Yeah, it's tough to get 9 and above is rarefied. Yeah, this is all very rare.
And that was the first 9 I'd given in a long time. So this is better than I like playing this better than Feud, but
it's close.
It's real close to That Time You Killed Me. This is like
it's great.
A fantastic game. You cannot go wrong. Buy it.
Yeah.
Like order this.
Bottom line.
Yeah. If you like, especially at 2 players, we can really vouch for it at 2 players. But
that's where we've been mainly playing.
That's where it belongs.
I'm not a big solo gamer, so I haven't tried out the solo game in here. Also, the 3 and 4 player modes didn't really appeal to me, but at 2 players, I adore this game.
Yeah,
absolutely adore this game, and that's where it feels like it should be played. So. Definitely. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Have you tried Mythic Mischief? Let us know your opinions of it. If you enjoyed this review and tutorial video and you'd like to see us do more like it, be sure to give it a like. Share it on all forms of social media. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.